Hi everyone, it's Dr. Jen Kordonsky from Optimal Spine Chiropractic in Aberdeen, Maryland. And tonight's class we're teaching is Fit While You Sit. And I wish tonight's class was going to be me teaching you how to get physically fit while you never leave the comfort of your couch, but unfortunately that's not the case. Tonight's class, Fit While You Sit, is really important and it's relevant to all of us, especially those of us who have to do our job seated, but that's more and more of us. Even those of us who aren't working from a seated position, we're still using our bodies seated most of the day, the vast majority of us. We sit for our entertainment, we sit for driving, we sit to use computers. So it's relevant and it's important to all of us. If you know someone who has to sit for their job, especially using a computer, please recommend that they watch this video. There's going to be some really key insights. Now, before we get started, I just want you to think a little bit about your ancestors, even just your great-grandparents. What was their life like? Was it very similar to yours? Most likely not. We live in a very unique time. The last few hundred years, technology has changed the way we do everything. So we have this ancient programming, these bodies that were evolved and adapted to a different way of life than we currently live. Now, movement was the way of life for human beings before technology. We had to move constantly all day, every day, to either hunt, gather food, farm, build our shelter, look for shelter, run after children. Everything we did involved movement. It was absolutely just how we were. It was not just the way of life. It was important for survival, which we'll talk about. We also had a lot of interaction with other human beings. We were not able to send a text message to someone down the hall or in the other room. We didn't send emails. We communicated face-to-face. We interacted with a lot of different individuals. And this was necessary for survival. So if you think about it, in human history, the only time that we human beings were not moving and not throughout the day doing varied activities and interacting with various people was when things were really, really bad, right? So if we weren't moving, we weren't interacting with others, we weren't going to survive. And so if the circumstances, a terrible famine, a very harsh winter, some terrible situation would be the only reason why a human would hunker down and be very sedentary. So this lack of movement actually still serves as a signal to your cells, to your genes, that something's not right. And we better hunker down and survive here. We better conserve all of our energy, not waste any bit. This was important if we had to survive, say, a winter or a famine, and the human body would we would naturally be less social, less interactive. We would want to stay put. Your body would divert energy from the immune system, the reproductive system. Your body would divert energy from healing and repair. Muscles would atrophy. Joints weren't being nourished and repaired, but it was all in the name of survival. If calories were limited, there was no resources, then the body goes into shutdown. Anything beyond the most important systems and keeping the brain functioning would be the most vital. So if you think about it, our modern lifestyle actually mimics this, where we barely have to move, we barely have to interact with other people, and yet we don't have the famine or the situation that we had before. So not only are we giving, we have the signal that tells our body just shut things down, conserve energy, don't do too much healing, don't do too much repair, don't put too much energy into the immune system. Put energy into conserving resources. But we don't have a lack of food in this situation. We have an abundance of it, even though we're not moving and signaling our body to do what it needs to do to thrive and be optimally healthy. So of course that's going to lead us to storing more fat than we need because we're conserving calories, and there is no lack of them. So our modern lifestyle has kind of set us up to be completely out of alignment with the way our bodies were designed to be. And our bodies are interpreting this lack of movement as a signal to not be in healing, growth, repair, thrival mode, and to just be in survival mode. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to just survive. I want to thrive. And that's what we want for you too. Now, the research is pouring in the last decade about how sitting these extended periods of time, the sedentariness of our work now, is really taking a toll on our health, huge health consequences. We've heard the headline in our article of the week talks about how sitting is the new smoking, because there was a time in our history, not that long ago, where everyone smoked. Doctors smoked, in the hospital, nurses smoked, and no one realized the toll it was taking on our health. Now, in hindsight, we're like, whoa, that was crazy. But sitting is like that. And like I said, the research is pouring in that shows the amount of time that we spend seated is having a direct influence on the health of our bodies. And actually, there's a very distinct correlation that the number of hours we spend seated every day raises the risk of chronic diseases. It's a direct equation. So, is it sitting that is toxic? Sitting is killing us. Sitting is hurting. No, the human body was designed to be able to sit down, right? But we have two problems that we need to address. One is how long we're sitting, and that's crucial. And the other is the way that we're sitting. So we're going to talk about these two things tonight. What's first struck me when I started teaching this topic was that most people would say, well, I know I have to sit to do my job, and I have to sit to drive to my job, and I sit when I get home from my job, and I sit when I relax on the weekends, but I go to the gym. You know, I work out 5 days a week. I go to the gym for an hour at a time. And what's really important to understand is that in this research that shows the direct correlation between hours of sitting and rates of chronic disease, we also see that that correlation doesn't come undone by hours spent in the gym. And that is, you know, at first really disheartening to people. And they're like, well, what am I wasting all this time for? That's not what I'm saying. There's definitely benefits to the exercise, but it does not decrease the correlation between the amount of time spent sitting and the rates of chronic disease. See, we need something else to do that for us. And what we need to do is actually very simple. It's just break up the length of time that we're sitting, and the research shows this. So we're going to talk about ways to interrupt the amount of time that we're sitting. The research shows us that 20 minutes at a clip is really the ideal, that we would interrupt and at least just stand up and sit back down. Now, if you do this, that does not absolve you from needing to do other forms of exercise too, but that is what coming. What we see in the research that will help us break this connection and lower the rates of chronic disease, even if we have to do our job in front of a computer and be seated a good portion of the day, that we can interrupt that and make it less damaging to our health. The other thing that I want to talk about is the way we sit. Now, typical seated posture actually reverses the curves of the spine and stresses your spine. Now, we know that anything that creates a stress to the spine is going to impact the health and function of the human body. The spine is the main conduit of communication between the brain and every part of the body. So anything that negatively impacts spinal health is going to take a toll on other aspects of our body. We need to know what the ideal alignment is so that when we sit, we're not sitting in a way that causes damage. So I'm going to grab the spine here, and you can see on that chart there behind me that there's some curves to the spine. Now, when we look at someone's body from the front, we want to see the spine straight, the shoulders level, and the hips level. So that's straight and aligned and strong in the face of gravity. What we need to see from the side, and if I line this up the way the poster goes, is that there's a slight curve in the lower back and a forward curve in the neck, right? So you can see the picture here, slight curve in the neck, the mid back comes out, the low back goes in slightly. Those curves are critical for the optimal function and the lifetime wear and tear of the spine. Those curves are there to help protect it. As soon as a person sits down though, very typically, they go and they sit, boom, like that, and they roll under the pelvis, and then the low back kind of protrudes out. So most people sit down and they go like this. And you'll see like the couch and seats in your car, airplane seats are notoriously bad for this, but they kind of cave in and just kind of encourage that forward roll, and that reverses the curve in your lower back. Now that instantly is going to change the way the nerves function in that area of the spine. And over time, that can become a postural habit that the body is just, if we spend many hours a day like this over and over, then it doesn't change so much when we stand up, that the pattern is kind of set in. Over the years, that is going to cause wear and tear, disc degeneration, arthritic changes in the spine, and these things, over years' time can become irreversible. The other thing that happens is when we sit, especially when we're using technology like a computer, we're reading a book, we're looking down at a tablet, we have a tendency to bring our head forward. So if the monitor that you're looking at is even just an inch too low, so it should be at eye level, if it's just an inch too low, instinctively you're going to lower your whole body to be able to, do your work. Now those of you who are stuck working from home on a laptop, that is the worst arrangement for your posture and your spinal health, because the monitor is always going to be too low because it's right on top of the keyboard. It's a laptop. So if possible, getting a separate keyboard, a separate mouse, so you could raise the monitor to an appropriate level and then still keep the keyboard down at an accessible level. That would be ideal. But when we're sitting, typical seated posture, head comes forward, low back curves out, and when it should be curved in, and then the shoulders roll forward, and then a lot of times our wrists are either bent too much up or too much down, and that just creates a lot of stress in the wrists and shoulders as well, which is a side note to the spine, but still important for those of you working from home. So optimally, we would, like I said, sit in such a way that there's a little bit of a curve in your lower back, the shoulders would be rolled back and down in a relaxed position, and the wrists straight, and the ear over the shoulder, not coming forward like this. And in that way, we are sitting, but we're protecting the alignment of the spine. Think about all those signals that are traveling through there. They're literally electrical signals. And an analogy that I love to use and put a little image in your mind that I want you to think of is the image of a light switch. And we've all used a light switch before, so you're very familiar with how it works. In the up position, the electricity is flowing to our light bulbs, and we have light, right? And then if we flick that light switch to the down position, it breaks the circuit or interrupts the circuit, and we don't get the flow of electricity to the light bulb, and so the lights go off. In your body, the flow of electricity, and that nerve signaling is literally electrical signaling from the brain down the spinal cord, out the nerves to the body, and from the body, electrical signals back up the spinal cord to the brain. If you are in the upright and on position, think of that electricity flowing freely, all the organs functioning optimally, all the light bulbs are on. If we go like this, click, and we go to the down position, flick that light switch off, I want you to imagine that you have shut off power to parts of your body, that those light bulbs go off, or they at least dim. This is why these hours and hours spent sitting, if the power is off, think about the health and vitality of those parts of your body. They certainly can't be thriving. So we always want to be in the upright and on position, have the power on to all of your vital organs. So I did mention that over time, these patterns of behavior, so even if you're not sitting for terribly long, but if this is your habit, then this habit starts to form and change your posture and the way your body's aligned all the time. And then over time, that's going to break down and wear out the discs in the neck and the low back, and really lead to degenerative changes. Most people are told that arthritis and disc decay are just, oh, it's part of life, it's aging. Well, it's not just how old a person is. It's the stress, it's the alignment, and the factor of time and gravity. So, what's the solution here? I mentioned before, we have to interrupt the amount of time that we're sitting. We have to break it up. And even if you stood up and sat right back down, the research tells us that that's going to have an effect, an improvement upon our health. Now, some people worry, well, I'm trying to get my work done, and if I stand up and I sit down every 20 minutes, then I'm going to get distracted, I'm going to get off task. Well, I'll tell you what's really the distraction that you don't even realize is glancing down at your phone, checking Facebook. Those are the real distractions. That will take your mind mentally off task, and actually the research shows how long it takes us to get back on task is a lot of wasted time. Physically standing up and sitting back down will not mentally take you off task as much as your eyes just glancing at a text message that came in. And here's something that not a lot of people know. The movement of your spine actually drives neurological function to an extent. The movement of your spine actually moves and refreshes the cerebrospinal fluid that your brain sits in. So I always say, would you like your brain, will you get your work done more efficiently and more thoroughly if your brain is sitting in a stagnant pool of cerebrospinal fluid, or if it's sitting in a fresh stream of crystal clear CSF? There is a fluid that bathes your brain and your spinal cord, and it does not get pumped like blood gets pumped by your heart and your arteries. Right? That cerebrospinal fluid that your brain sits in gets pumped by the movement of your spine, mainly your occiput, the base of your skull, and your sacrum, your tailbone. So when the occiput and the sacrum move, they're pumping that fluid, and like a fresh supply is getting moved through. So that's certainly going to be an improvement in how your cognitive powers are working. And the other thing I mentioned is that the movement of the spinal joints drive neurological function. Every joint in your body is loaded with nerve endings. And even if you're sitting very still, there's information that is being sent from those nerve endings to your brain about the status of the joint. So your brain always knows where you are in space. Now, when you move a joint, any joint, where two bones come together as a joint, that's going to send a lot of neurological information to the brain, and think of that as driving the gears and getting the brain moving, driving neurological function. The spine is the most richly innervated set of joints in your body. There's so many joints here. Every place where two vertebrae touch is a joint, and they're richly innervated. And when you move the spine, you're going to send a lot of signals to the brain and drive its function and keep it running at 100%. So I want you to think about this. If you're just physically a sedentary person, not only are you sitting poorly, but you're not moving the spine at all. Your brain is not getting a lot of signaling to drive its function. It's not getting fresh CSF. Now, what if we do that for years and years and years? Think about the health of the brain, the cognitive ability of the brain. Is it possible that some of the age-related mental decline, the Alzheimer's and the neurological conditions that we associate with aging could be years and years of not having the appropriate stimulation? It's something to consider for sure. So we have to be making more time for movement when we do have to sit, because yes, even if you stand and you do your work and you're taking your conference calls and you're moving around, and we're all going to sit at some point. When we do, we want to sit appropriately. Think about how the impact over time to your health of your spine, the health of your body. Think about how we associate that now with aging, with adults. We did not have the technology. We didn't use the technology the way children are until much later in life. I didn't have my first cell phone, and it was just a flip phone. It didn't do anything other than make phone calls until I was in college. So we have 2-year-olds. We have kindergartners being issued laptops and doing school from home. This is going to become a bigger problem, have more of an impact on our health and the health of our children than we can even imagine. If sitting is the new smoking, and someday we're going to look back and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe how we used to take care of our bodies, what we used to do, and look at the toll that it's taken on our health. We have to make more time for movement. And as much as the changes that COVID-19 has brought into our lives with having less social interaction, which is problematic for our health, there is an opportunity here. The opportunity is that we are changing the way we work, the way we do our school. All of that is kind of new, and so many more people are working from home. The world is changing, and now is our opportunity. Now is your opportunity to say, you know what, I'm going to do this differently. You're not stuck in the conference room with everybody looking at you now. You can get up out of your seat. You can move around. You don't have a commute anymore? Then there's time for some movement in the morning. Nobody cares what you're wearing to work anymore. There's time to, mix in 2-minute workouts through the day. There's an opportunity for this, and we need to demand it of our workplaces, and we need to demand it of our schools, that we can move our bodies, because the brain will not function optimally without the body. We think that we can separate these two things, but it's just not possible. They have to be healthy. They have to work together to have maximal efficiency. So, more time for movement. Break up the time that we spend sitting. When we sit, sit properly. I want you to remember forever and ever that when I sit in the upright on position, the light switch is on, the power is flowing, and when I go like this, click, in front of my laptop, then I have just shut the power off to some of my vital organs, and that is going to take a toll on my health and my productivity, because sometimes we think, I just got to get the job done and I will do whatever it takes, but your productivity suffers as well. The shoulders in the down and relaxed back position, wrists straight so that they are not being stressed in a flexion or extended position. And we have to, no matter what, make time in our lives to be adjusted. So no one, even if you're doing it perfectly all the time, is going to be able to avoid the toll that using our bodies will take. And the health of your spine is so critical that we should not be leaving it to chance, hoping that it's fine. Oh, my back doesn't hurt, so it must be okay. Even in my line of work, where I don't sit very often, in fact, there is no seat or desk here that is mine, I am doing a repetitive type of movement. I'm using my body in the same way all the time. So again, it's still out of alignment with the way the human body was designed. So if we're going to use our bodies, we have to maintain our bodies. And it's absolutely critical that regular chiropractic care is part of your life, just like brushing your teeth is part of your life because you've eaten food and they've gotten dirty. In conjunction with your adjustments, there's certain stretches, certain exercises that will be helpful to undo the time that we spend sitting. Even if our posture is good, there are certain things certain muscles that are going to tighten up, the hip flexors, the pectorals. And so if you'd like to get a copy of the common stretches that we prescribe for counteracting the effects of sitting so often, then please just type in the comments that you would like the handout for Fit While You Sit. If you are watching this on YouTube and you want to get a copy of those notes, please just go to our website, oschiropractic.com, and send a little message, the appointment request, I think it's, and just send a message, email me the handout for Fit While You Sit, and we'll get that to you as soon as possible. But please pass this message along to someone you know that is working from home right now and maybe hunched over their laptop and not even thinking twice about it, and they need to know that there are things that they should be doing and that this is taking a toll on their productivity and their health and well-being. So on that note, once you've shared this, have a wonderful night, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.